On February 4th, 1997, a civil jury in Santa Monica, California found O.J. Simpson responsible for the wrongful deaths of his ex-wife Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman. We aired the following profile of the case on November 22nd, 1996, the day Simpson himself took the witness stand for the first time. The scene is familiar. O.J. Simpson at the center of a media storm. The unanswered question hanging in the air. Who killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman? The trial of the century, part 2, is underway. Now in civil court, Simpson faces accusations stemming from the double murder. But this time, Simpson's own testimony may decide the outcome. Already, Simpson's attorneys have repeated charges raised in the criminal trial that he was framed by rogue LAPD detectives.
But thus far,
prosecutors had built much of their case on an incriminating trail of Simpson's blood. It was at the Bundy Avenue crime scene, they said, on the back gate of Nicole's condominium. It was in Simpson's Ford Bronco, the alleged getaway car. The trail of blood continued at Simpson's Rockingham Avenue estate, said the prosecution. This glove, found behind Simpson's house, had traces of his blood, along with the blood of both victims. A pair of socks found in Simpson's bedroom, and allegedly worn during the murders, was stained with Nicole's blood and that of O.J. Simpson. Prosecutors said the blood had dripped from this wound on Simpson's left hand, allegedly sustained when the knife slipped during the attack on Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. However, the defense team contended that much of the blood evidence was planted. They suggested it was stolen from this reference vial of Simpson's blood, provided to the police for DNA tests. But who did the dirty work? The defense accused 4 LAPD detectives, Bill Van Adder, Tom Lang, Ron Phillips, and Mark Furman, of either lying or tampering with evidence.
To believe that the LAPD would frame O.J. Simpson, that ridiculous frame-up theory, you'd have to believe that these 2 teams of LAPD detectives, Lang and Van Adder, Furman and Phillips, from different divisions of the LAPD, didn't work with each other, didn't even know each other, arrive at the crime scene in the middle of the night, and suddenly they all agree that whoever killed these 2 poor people, they didn't care. They were going to let the true killer or killers go. And instead, again, they all agree, apparently with no dissent, that they're going to frame, of all people on the face of this earth, O.J. Simpson. Someone, incidentally, who...
Former prosecutor Vince Bugliosi is probably best known for sending cult leader Charles Manson to prison for life. Now Bugliosi is back in the spotlight. His controversial book, Outrage, The 5 Reasons Why O.J. Simpson Got Away with Murder, recently topped the New York Times bestseller list.
we don't think the prosecutor...
Arguing for the defense tonight will be Alan Dershowitz, one of the architects of Simpson's defense strategy during his criminal trial.
It never occurred to the police in this case to frame or plant evidence against somebody who was even possibly innocent. The police knew, in their own mind, knew that Simpson was absolutely guilty. They knew he would get away with it because he was a celebrity. He would be able to hire the best lawyers. They simply wanted to help the process of justice. In their mind, if they tampered with evidence, they were framing a guilty person.
According to Simpson's defense, the frame-up began with Mark Furman. Initially one of the lead detectives on the case, he was dispatched to Bundy when the bodies were discovered. But 45 minutes later, the investigation was reassigned to Lang and Van Adder, members of a special LAPD unit created to handle high-profile cases.
The defense theory has always been that Mark Furman, when he was told he got off the case, wandered off away from the murder scene for a few minutes in frustration, and it was outside of the murder scene that he may have found the glove, which would have been dropped by the escaping murderer, not within the murder scene itself. And then he put it in his pocket, or put it in a plastic bag, or put it in his sock.
14 LAPD officers had arrived at the Bundy crime scene before Furman, and every single one of them only saw one glove there. So there was no second glove at Bundy for Furman to pick up and deposit at Rockingham.
The fix continued at Rockingham charged the defense. They claimed that Detective Furman, back on the case at Lang's request, took the opportunity to plant the bloody glove he had allegedly brought from Bundy. The defense further suggested that Furman may have been motivated by racial animosity.
Police brutality by the police and lies by the police to cover it up. Very common, not percentage-wise, but numerically it happens all the time, and is something that the black community has been experiencing throughout the years. Police frame-ups of blacks, on the other hand, for crimes like robbery, rape, burglary, murder, virtually unheard of. Absolutely not a part of the black experience. Extremely rare. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. Virtually unheard of.
But in this case, argued the defense, police literally painted evidence with Simpson's blood in a malicious effort to tie him to the double homicide. The day after the murders, attorney Howard Weitzman and Detective Van Adder escorted O.J. Simpson downtown to this police lab. A nurse drew a sample of Simpson's blood and handed it to Van Adder. He went to Rockingham and gave the vial of blood to LAPD criminalist Dennis Fung.
We know that Van Adder had Simpson's blood reference sample, and it's easy to imagine how that could have resulted in a transfer of that sample to the glove. Remember that at the time the glove was found, all we know is it had blood on it. It hadn't been tested for whose blood was on it. And all you have to do is splatter some of the defendant's blood on it, and that will come up positive in a DNA test.
Why would Van Adder even dream about bringing a vial of blood back to Rockingham to plant evidence from it when he knew that hundreds upon hundreds of reporters and members of the media had already congregated at Rockingham, their cameras blanketing the premises to pick up for the evening news the movements of everyone on the estate? There were helicopters up above filming everything down below. Certainly not a favorable environment for planting, right?
Oh, he wouldn't need an opportunity to taint at that point. All he would need was an opportunity to take some of the blood and keep it in his possession to taint it later.
For what purpose was Van Adder carried?
Defense attorneys suggested that during the 3 hours Van Adder had the sample, he siphoned off a small amount of Simpson's blood. The defense accused Van Adder of dabbing some of the stolen blood on the back gate at Bundy.
That blood was not inventoried during the original search, and yet blood appeared weeks later, and therefore it gave rise to the inference that perhaps that blood was placed on the back gate.
What happened here is that Dennis Fung, the LAPD criminalist who was collecting the evidence at the Bundy crime scene, a crime scene that was awash with blood, he didn't see the blood on the back gate. And that's why it wasn't collected until July the 3rd, 1994. But 5 detectives saw that blood there on the night of the murders and so testified at the trial.
The defense also accused Van Adder of using Simpson's blood to taint the glove found at Rockingham and the socks from Simpson's bedroom while they were in police custody.
They gave the defense an opportunity which we had a constitutional obligation to use to challenge the credibility of the prosecution's case based on the fact that he would walk around with his blood.
Take Detective Phil Van Adder, 28 years on the force, not one citizen complained against him in 28 years, about to retire with his wife Rita to his farm in Indiana. And he's going to risk his good name to frame O.J. Simpson? Even before Simpson came back from Chicago. In other words, before they took his blood and had any opportunity to plant or sprinkle it, Simpson's blood had already been found at the crime scene. There was blood all over his Bronco, his driveway, and his home. So it's ridiculous.
There are many...
But defense attorneys claimed there was evidence that blood was missing from Simpson's reference sample. Defense allegations rested on testimony by LAPD nurse Thano Paratus. In Simpson's preliminary hearing, Paratus said he took approximately 8 cc's of Simpson's blood.
You say approximately. You did not measure the amount?
Well, it could have been 7.9 or it could have been 8.1.
By the time of the trial, prosecutors could only account for 6.5 cc's. If the original estimate by Paratus was accurate, 1.5 centiliters might be missing. It was scarcely more than a quarter teaspoonful, but to the defense, it was plenty.
The 1.5 centiliters of missing blood would have been more than enough to account for all the blood on the socks, all the blood on the back gate, and all the blood on the glove.
Nobody asked you to take a precise amount
No.
of blood? And you did not record the amount of blood you took?
No, it's just routinely.
Thano Paradas,
the
that's
amount.
the nurse at the LAPD dispensary at Parker Center, testified that he didn't bother to check or measure it. Why? Because he had been working down there for over 30 years at the dispensary, and this is the first time that anyone ever made any issue about how much blood he withdrew from someone's arm. So it was very, very imprecise. So we don't know at all that he withdrew 8 cc's from Simpson's arm. We don't know that at all. It was just a guess.
Given the importance of how much blood was taken from O.J. Simpson, it is interesting to note one fact never mentioned at the criminal trial. The type of instruments used to draw and store Simpson's blood had no measurement calibrations whatsoever. It was impossible for anyone to know exactly how much blood was drawn from O.J. Simpson.
Had there been no other suspicious circumstances, I think the jury probably would have believed the prosecution's explanation. But the jury did come back with the right verdict. The right verdict was not guilty on the ground of reasonable doubt. The verdict was not innocent. And even if 100% of Americans thought he did it, the right verdict would still be not guilty if there was a reasonable doubt about whether he did it.
If you put any criminal case under a high-powered microscope, you're going to find a few inconsistencies here and there, a few discrepancies, unanswered questions, etc. And that's true because of the nature of life. You know, life does not proceed in apple pie order with mathematical precision. These defense attorneys, okay, who elevated audacity to a Zen art, okay, what these people have done, they focus in on a little hair, you know, and then split that hair, and then proceeded to split the split hair. But they're not fooling anyone. Not only was Simpson's blood found at the murder scene, but the victim's blood was found inside his car and home. And under the circumstances, the question is not, is he guilty or not guilty? That's not the question. The question, is it possible for him to be innocent?
I am totally convinced that we will never know for sure whether O.J. Simpson did or didn't do it because the police tampered with evidence, because the police botched the evidence, because the prosecution put on witnesses who were not telling the truth. The process of justice was distorted in this case, and when the process of justice is distorted, we can have no confidence in the results of justice.
The decision in the Simpson civil trial has done little to stem the controversy surrounding this case. In the end, it is a peculiar and tragic episode with no winners. 2 families have been ruined. 2 innocent people have been brutally slain. And a one-time hero has been both acquitted of their murders and found liable for their deaths.